You've tamed the voices in your head. You've put your courage to the test. Laid all your doubts to rest.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Intuitive Queens podcast from your intuition queen. Today I have the pleasure to have Jess Neary, who is a Feng Shui expert. Hi Jess, how are you?
Hi Mara, I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, thank you for being here. I'm so excited because I so love Feng Shui, but I don't know so much. I always try to look at what might be best to have, but we'll get to this. I'd love for you to tell us your story because I know that you have a very interesting start. Something went wrong and turned out to be right, but I'd love for you to tell us and tell us especially how did you feel, how your life went from there on.
Absolutely. So I was in the last year of high school. So I was in grade 12 and just trying to discover what I was going to do with my life. And I had so many pulls into interior design. It was a topic that really flooded my life. It didn't depend on where the information was coming from, but I was watching interior design shows on television. I was looking up things online with the interior design. That was my world. And when, I was in the last term of my high school, just before graduation, I applied to this amazing school here in Canada for a degree in interior design. Now, this program was at the time, like it's been about 10, 15 years now, it was one of the only schools that offered this program. It was very well recognized and well known in Toronto, Ontario, and it was a big moment for me because I grew up in a very small town, very small community here in Hampton, New Brunswick, Canada. And so this idea of traveling to Toronto to attend school, which was right in the center of Toronto, right downtown, was so attractive to me. And I had put in this lengthy application process, or went through this lengthy application process. There was some testing done, and only 100 people out of about 1,000 or more applicants were accepted into this program. So
Wow.
I knew that it felt like a long shot, but not really. Like it felt very much like what I was meant to do. And so I had applied, I went through the whole process, and I was actually accepted into this program, which was like the best feeling ever, because for so long I was getting these breadcrumb trails into interior design. And so I felt like this is it, And during the process of approving your acceptance into this program, you're online and you're going through the check marks to confirm your seat so that they know that you'll be attending and your seat is reserved for you. And I was online, I went through the process, or so I thought. But 2 weeks later in the mail, I received a notice, and it said, "We're so sorry that you were unable to accept your seat and your position, but now you're no longer in the program." And my heart at that moment, honestly, it just shattered, or it felt very much like what just happened. Like, this is so surreal.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was such a huge part in my entire story. And it's something that I've now been able to look back on and really embrace and be very grateful for it. But during the time, it was a moment that it's almost like it was the worst fear that could have probably happened when you put so much work and emphasis into a program that it's not even within, it's just not something that at the time was even an option for someone coming from a small community. Universities here did not have that. Typically, it was just business, sciences, arts, that sort of thing. So interior design is such a grand vision, or was such a grand vision for myself at the time. So
but what happened there?
yeah.
Why
Yeah,
did they kick you out? Like, what
right.
was the issue
Yeah.
there?
So what happened was, and this is something that I wouldn't say I have an assumption about, but when I went through the process again online to see, well, what happened, what went awry, there was just, I think, a final confirm button that was missed.
Mm.
That's all that it was. And
Oh my God.
yeah, what a pivotal moment in my entire like educational career, my life. Um, Missing this button or hitting it and it just not uploading perhaps
Mm.
might be another explanation. In either case, it had booted me out. And I was on the waiting list then for the rest of the summer. And every week I'd call like clockwork to see where I was. And it never budged because it's just such an exclusive program
Mm.
that it a seat never did become available for me there.
Wow, like I can only imagine how you could have felt at that point, knowing that for a stupid reason, if you want to
Yeah.
say, like for a very tiny
Yeah.
moment, you didn't manage to fulfill your dream there.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it was like I can still put myself like I could go right back to that memory because it was such a strong, it elicited such a strong emotional
Mm.
response. I can remember the type of day it was, what time of day it was, who was there, and what, how I obviously responded and reacted to hearing the news. Um, but it's interesting because from that point on, it was like, okay, well, now what do I do?
Mm.
Because I had so much focus placed on this one outlet of expressing interior design or design in general and looking at our
Yeah.
environment. Then it's like, okay, how do I build this new future, this new path, really, that up until that point was the path I was going to be on. So yeah.
So how did you decide? How did you move on? Like what did you do next? Did you try to go for something similar?
Right. Well, I had a backup plan. However, I was not expecting to use it. My backup plan was to stay at home and I was going to attend the local university and I was going to go into the arts program there.
Mm.
However, once that became like that was the plan, was to go to the local university. It was switched from arts to business,
Mm.
which was really interesting. Again, in hindsight, looking at everything and how instrumental all these decisions were at
Mm.
creating this future that I'm now living and continue to walk this path. It's really put a new perspective on, taking different chapters or different paths in your life and really embracing what it has to offer. But I did go to a 4-year degree program at the local university doing business.
Mm.
And within the business administration program, I met some really incredible people. I had some incredible experiences with different professors, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot of what I liked and what I didn't like. But I ended up graduating with a major in human resource development. And I actually used that degree and went into a career working in an office environment with my HR. And so I was
Mm.
working as an HR advisor, and it was very different, a very different work environment than, again, what I kind of originally thought I'd be working in. And so there was definitely some, I don't want to say settling, but like concessions that I was making at the
Yeah.
time. And just year after year, as I'd been there for 5 years, I just felt myself sinking lower and
Mm.
lower. And now I've come to realize that I was living another life, like someone else's life almost.
Right.
And the decisions that I was making in those moments weren't in line with myself, my
Mm.
true values, my passion. And although I was working in this position in an office setting using HR, I was still doing interior design, for sure, for sure in my own home. But I would take local, like there was college electives that would just randomly appear, and I would take those courses.
Mm.
And I just remember this one time that I was in the class for the first time. It was like maybe a year or two after I had decided to go into business, and so kind of had like a bit of separation from the design world. And I went home after the first class of this college program, and I just bawled. And it felt like such a release and a relief, in the sense like, oh, it's still here. Like
Yeah.
there's still this part of me that really gets super excited and lit
Mm.
up by creating environmental spaces and design. And through that program, it was phenomenal because the teacher at the time, he really embraced this idea of, sustainable design, looking at our home environment, having plants in it, um, even looking at the light source you have, using natural light. So although it wasn't specifically geared towards feng shui, there was it was almost like interior design was starting to take on a whole new approach,
Mm.
like the industry itself, at looking at how to optimize our own health and well-being. And that's what I really took away from that course. But
Wow. Wow,
yeah,
I love this because I guess I can only imagine when you're planning your future, you're almost there, you almost have it in your hands, and that thing disappears, how you feel inside, and how
yeah,
difficult can be to really be clear with your mind and with your heart on what to do next that
yeah,
will have a consequence for your future. and
yeah,
and oftentimes, because we are so sad and frustrated about, we make decisions that not necessarily make any sense.
mm-hmm.
So you went for a completely different route, but then
Complete.
uh, as you said, that really you started to feel there was something, missing. uh,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
so when you were working as HR,
Mm-hmm.
um, you said that when you talked about the first class, you said it was still there. So I guess you mean your passion for interior design and stuff. Why did you say that? Did you try to forget about it in all those years because you
Yeah.
you had taken another path and it was too
Mm-hmm.
painful?
Absolutely. It was, and I don't know if I had mentioned it earlier or not in the podcast, but it felt like when I made the decision to do business, the time it was just like, okay, this is just my second choice, no big deal. I got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely had some pressure from my parents, to continue my education straight from high school. So taking a year off just never felt like an option for me.
Mm,
So I felt like I, again, was having these moments where I was settling for just the next best thing based on my limited parameters.
right.
Um, and so when I had worked in a career that just didn't feel fulfilling for me, and then have an exposure to interior design again, it was just like, oh, there's a break. Like, I don't have to necessarily live in this world where I'm doing, at least at the time, I thought, just an office HR position. And because to me, the life that I was living at that time just didn't feel great.
Mm,
There were definitely good moments, but there was a lot of really sad moments as well, and I just didn't feel that sense of completion, I want to say.
mm,
But at the end of the day, I'd go home upset, or something had happened in the office and I was taking it home with me. um, I felt very limited in the growth potential being in that position. So I just felt like my own creativity there was no space for that to be
right.
expressed.
Yeah.
And I very much feel like the design portion of me was like I missed a bit.
Mm,
So when I finally had that course, I was like, and I had that emotional release, it was like, it's okay. It's been a couple of years, but you can get back into it. And it was almost like a glimmer of hope as
mm,
well. just, again, following those breadcrumbs. And that's how I describe my own like intuitive pulse and what I now use to help lead me and listen to so much more. So, yeah.
So from that moment, and were you thinking, okay, now if I do this course and I get this, I don't know, certificate or something, maybe I can start something else? Or were you still in a situation where you're like, okay, well, I'll start this and let's see what happens?
It was more like, let's see what happens. I was really doing this course only for my own fulfillment and just like a hobby on the side. And I remember a good friend of mine at the time, she ran into me in the street, and this was on my coffee break from my office position with HR. And she looked at me, she goes, Jess, like, I know you really like doing interior design. You need to keep doing it. And you need to, you need to have this part of your life, whether that be just a hobby, but you need it, you need that. And I think because she recognized that I lit up, and even in that moment it felt like such a divine message being delivered, and it still resonate with me, and I still think of it fairly often. And and it's really helped propel me to look at that even further. And so then a couple more years passed, and again I was like separating from the interior design world and just more into the daily life, and things started to get to a point where I was like, there needs to be a shift, there needs to be a change. And in 2010, at the end of 2010, I actually met my husband, my now husband, and there was this major, it was a catalyst. Meeting him was a major catalyst for a big change in my life. And the way that he grew up and the way that he approaches life is very intuitive, although I don't know if he would ever call it that. But it's like, if you're not happy with what you're doing, then you need to change something about it, you know? And I very much felt like for these 4 or 5 years that I was trying and forcing to really like something that, yes, I was good at, but just didn't light me up and give me that joy and that freedom to express and just to live my life at its fullest. And so from that point on, I started looking at, my life plan, and did, the 5-year chart of looking at where I wanted to be with family, friends, my financials, traveling, and then career was also a really, really big one. And I felt like just even in that moment, it's like I felt freer or loosened up. Like things are starting to be like, okay, the idea that I don't need to stay in a position that I'm not happy with was just such a great opportunity to start looking at other opportunities, I guess. And
That's really interesting, because I have a question, because I feel this is a topic that I hear a lot of times, like this feeling for which you think you need to stay in a place that doesn't make you happy. Why did you think that was the case? I know that probably your husband supported you because obviously that was his vision of life, but why did you think you had to stay in a place that didn't make you happy?
Right. Well, part of that is certainly my childhood and my upbringing. And what I mean by that is, even what I mentioned earlier about going off to university or doing something after high school and not having any time off, there was a very strong, I say pressure, but guidance, I guess, to go into furthering your education. And there was a lot of emphasis on finding a career path that would set you up and be financially stable. You would have security, like job security. And so this position I was working in was actually with the federal government. It was a permanent position. I had full benefits, health and dental. I had a pension, and the pay was phenomenal, and it was protected because we were also unionized. And so it was a very safe career. And I think at the time I put a lot of weight on that aspect of it and thinking, well, I'm pretty well set for life,
Right.
unless I choose to leave. But I've got the golden ticket, so why would I leave that? And
Mm.
so it was almost like I had put these limitations already around me. It's just that it had gone to a point where I outgrew those limitations and I needed a new environment. I needed like a new life at the time
Yeah.
to thrive. And
Yeah.
yeah, so when I made the decision, well, I guess we'd be fast forwarding a little bit, but I made the decision that in order to have these things that I wanted in my life plan, I needed to go back to school for more education,
Mm.
because the current education I had with my business degree wasn't enough to put me in a position of where I wanted to go and how I wanted my life to kind of look like or unfold, or what resonated more with myself.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Right.
so I
Yeah.
left my position in the
Yay!
government.
um,
Yeah.
so how long was that since you met your husband and you started to have that kind of relieving conversation where I guess you kind of felt like you had the permission to do
Yeah.
something different.
Right.
How long did
Hmm.
was from that moment?
The whole from meeting him till the day I submitted my letter of resignation was a year and 2 months.
All
Like,
right.
it was relatively quick.
Mm.
And I say that because when we met, there was a couple months that we were together, and then I decided to go off to Cambodia for a trip. And I went to Cambodia with Habitat for Humanity, and I went there to build homes.
Mm.
That was on the agenda. And so for a week, that's what we did. We went to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and we built 2 homes for 2 amazing families that were living with AIDS and poverty. Those were the what we were helping with. And that experience was life changing as well. Making the decision just to even travel, from
Mm.
the day that I actually traveled to Cambodia, was 2 weeks. Like, it was a very quick,
Wow.
very meant to be process and procedure. It was so smooth. But when I was over there, which is a completely different culture, it's a
Mm.
completely different environment than what I'm used to here in Canada, it again further opened my eyes to different possibilities and different ways of living, to see, although they were, dealing with AIDS and poverty, they were still the happiest, most grateful people
Mm.
I think that I've ever met. And it was reflective in the culture and the other people around in the community. And it was just so beautiful of a moment for me to look and readjust my own priorities, because this was a culture that had little to no belongings.
Mm.
And in my everyday life, I was surrounded by an abundance of furniture, clothing, cars, like anything that I
Mm.
needed. And again, it just helped me set my own priorities
Right.
and put first things first. And that was happiness, connection, family, and relationships, among maybe a few other things. But I came back home and decluttered everything. I was already living at the time in, a 1-bedroom apartment by myself, and I had very little things. But
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I was like, I need to go smaller. I need to be in like a bachelor studio size apartment. And it was tiny. It was like 20 by 20. And that was
Mm.
my living space, sleeping space, dining space. It was everything. And I simplified my life completely down to just the essentials. And that's like a bed. I think I had a dresser because there were no closets in this space.
Mm.
And then a few cutlery, like utensils and dishes for cooking and eating. But I pared down everything, and then it was like rebuilding from that almost.
Like
Yeah.
as if it feels like you were starting to build the new you.
Yeah, absolutely. And figuring out like, who was I?
Mm.
Because for 5 years, I was living a life that felt like it wasn't working, or there were certain aspects that were for sure, but there were others that weren't. So it was just like getting to know myself again. So
Yeah.
doing the solo trip that, you know, to get to Cambodia was 30 hours all by myself going through. I went through New York and then to Hong Kong. And then there was a couple other smaller airports along the way to get to Phnom Penh, because it's such a, it's so far from like major cities, or,
Yeah.
you know,
Wow, that was
industrialized cities.
a first big trip. For
Huge trip.
someone that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
But I guess that's when all the real transformation starts to happen, because you do something that might scare you a little bit, but at the same time, the
Yeah.
excitement and the service for those other people that you were giving them
Yeah.
really was what tried, I guess, for you to go there.
Absolutely. It just
Yeah.
felt, it felt right.
Mm.
And even along the whole trip, you know, my parents were like, I wouldn't say petrified, but they were pretty concerned, because I mean, I'm the oldest in my family as well. So this is something totally new for them. I'm going to a completely foreign country, halfway around the world. Like, it was such a shock. And just to, for myself to be in that moment of honestly having a backpack for, I ended up being there for 3 weeks. I just went with a backpack with my stuff, very minimal, very light packing, and just going with the flow, and just trusted that everything was going to be okay, and that I was taken care of. And it's like, it was such a spiritual experience that has really taught me so much, that I feel like I've carried out or into my life today too.
Yeah, I can imagine how free you felt to do such a
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now you leave your job. What happens?
Yeah. It was March 2012, and I put in my letter of resignation, and I had a complete summer off,
Mm-hmm.
technically, to just figure things out. My husband, my now husband, my boyfriend at the time, and we moved in together, and we had this really beautiful apartment in the middle of St. John, New Brunswick, which is like our big city. And I just had the summer off to figure out who I was, what I wanted, what I needed to do, the next step, that sort of thing. And it was such a weird time. It was a really weird feeling to not be expected to do something or be
Mm,
somewhere. And I think up until that point, it had been, I don't know if I've ever had that freedom to
right.
choose, or have that feeling of freedom to choose, maybe my whole life, because even as a baby or child, we still had to be up in the morning to go off somewhere. It was very
Mm.
structured. And this was like a total destruction,
Yeah.
unstructured life, where I got to like try things out and figure out what made me feel good.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how was the transition for you? What brought this freedom for you?
Hmm. Well, it was, again, it's just like following the breadcrumbs and choosing what felt right for me in the moment, and looking at what I wanted to do. So at the end of the summer, I was like, okay, I want to work. I want to serve. I want to be with a team of individuals where we're working towards a goal, and that. And so I started looking at different career paths, or employment opportunities, really. And I started working at Starbucks, like our local Starbucks. And it was great. It was one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, because the community feel,
Mm.
being in constant communication with, you know, the customers, it was just a really fun, uplifting environment to be in. I quickly gained to supervisor. However, saying that, within a month of working there, I became pregnant with our daughter. So honestly, after about 6 months, that career path dissolved, and I ventured into motherhood. And yeah, so that has been, again, like another catalyst into pursuing and following my own heart. And becoming a mother felt very, I mean, I've always kind of approached life as to um, what lesson am I providing for my children? And it's really a weird, bizarre way, I think, of looking at things, but I'm looking at, the next generation, certainly legacy, but looking at what kind of an impact can I have, or do I have, in this world, and being certainly more intentional with it. So when I became a mother, again, interior design popped right back up as to what to do. And there was a moment where I had to say, okay, is this it? Like, am I ready to go for it? And I did. So I studied interior design from home, and I obtained my diploma a year later. And it was wonderful. It was really, it was wonderful. It was great, and it was fulfilling. It felt like, okay, I could do that. It gave a lot of encouragement, self-encouragement, self-empowerment. Um, it was really wonderful. Saying that, during the time I started venturing much more into energy healing and different modalities under that entire umbrella, because there's so many different ways that you can heal energetically through different modalities. But I had received my first Reiki treatment at the time. I was doing yoga, and attended a meditation program. So I was starting to incorporate more mindfulness into my life, and that was another major breadcrumb that just resonated so strongly with me. I also felt too that within my, like, venturing into motherhood, it opened me up to so much more.
It opened your heart.
It sure did. It sure did. It opened my heart. It opened my third eye. It opened my crown. It was such a spiritual awakening, where I started to look at life, and it's so funny, but like, I could see the steps that I had taken before me and the purpose that it had served in my life. And I just had this new appreciation for the decisions I was going to be making moving forward, and again, being intentional about it and mindful, and taking more steps and following that path. Yeah.
I like that you say this. I like that you say that having a child opened you up. It's kind of like you've been kind of pushed towards what you really were supposed to do, but there was still something that you were still resistant for whatever reason. And then with the birth of your child, that resistance kind of let you go, and you finally decided to step into your power. Yeah, it's amazing. So okay, now it's the time to tell us a little bit about what you do. I know a little bit, and I know some of the listeners do also know a little bit, but would you like to explain to us what is Feng Shui, and exactly how you can help your clients? And you said that you also started working with the energies, and I know that Feng Shui also is aligned to energies and all that. So if you can give us an explanation to understand a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. So just to bridge from interior design to Feng Shui, I, again, was doing interior design. I started my interior design practice. But at the same time, I was practicing energy healing modalities. And there came to be a point when I thought, okay, there's got to be a way to combine energy healing and interior design. And that is honestly when Feng Shui entered in to my own life and into my own home. And it is a perspective of looking at your home's arrangement or your office or your car, but it's your environment that you find yourself in. Rearranging the furniture or the objects for optimal flow. It's also looking at the decorations, the decor, and ensuring that what it is that you have is really setting you up and supporting you, nourishing you, mind, body, spirit, to take you into the journey or to help you further your own personal journey. And it's a fascinating discipline practice because it's very practical and it's a way that you can feel empowered to make some shifts in your own space, which then directly translates into your life. Our space, our environment reflects directly what it is that we are going through. All the good, all the bad, everything is being reflected into our interior space. So by making these shifts in our home and in our space, we're allowed to loosen up and free up maybe some obstacles or limiting beliefs that have been providing that resistance. But it's this incredible opportunity of healing and growth and stepping into your future.
Ah, that's nice. And you have a nice home and it feels cozy. Okay. And so if someone comes to you saying, I need help,
Right.
what are the things that for you are the most important that people will need to look at and maybe change in their home?
A big thing right now, for sure, is decluttering. It's such a relevant topic because I feel like as our souls evolve and as the collective evolves, we're shedding so many layers, and that is reflective and resonant to clutter in your home and your space. And again, just like in my story a moment earlier ago, talking about having these realizations and then coming home after my trip and letting go of everything. It's like I had to declutter to clear that space, like yourself, to really clear out that energy to bring in this fresh, new energy into your life that'll welcome this transition that you may be going through. Oftentimes, I'm working with clients that are going through transitions.
Right.
And so I would say before adding anything into your home space, to start going through your home and taking out what no longer resonates with you, what no longer is serving you or your highest good at this time or, in the future to come. But certainly once you start to free up any clutter, and when I say clutter, it could be boxes of things that you're storing that you just haven't had time to get to, but it could be as simple as, like, I'm just going to put up here for example, if there's a book that you're not reading anymore but you have it on display, and that just doesn't really resonate with you anymore, that can equate to clutter as well. So clearing that up, freeing it, and letting it go can create such a change in moving forward. But certainly decluttering is always a really great step, because I find, especially if you're feeling stuck or like maybe you are boxed in, like you feel very limited in what it is that you're doing, then freeing yourself up in your own environment is going to be a really great step moving forward. It's very practical. It's very easy to do. Once you're ready to let go of these things.
Yeah, I think this is really powerful because we get attached to things, and as you said, that book that maybe you've been given it by your friend, but if it no longer matches who you are and what you do, there's no point for you to have it there. Or other stuff that we get so attached to, by clothes or old presents or whatever that could be. For some reason we keep on having it there, but they no longer serve us. So energetically wise, that's also a lot of space that you cannot take for yourself and whatever it is that you want to have in your life.
Absolutely. There's such a freedom which is incredibly powerful. Yeah, to freeing up space. And it reminds me so much of doing like, excuse me, yoga postures when we're starting to open up, our chest, or in any pose, once we start to make space in your home. I know for myself, it felt very bizarre at first because I have this part of me, or had, I guess, this part of me of wanting to fill all the corners or fill the spaces in my home. And I find that's, reflective in my clients as well, that there's this, well, if I take this piece of furniture away, then what am I going to put in its place? And it's like, oftentimes they say, like, let's just sit with space first, because you're going to be adjusting to this new vibration in your home. And before we start adding things, let's just sit with it for a bit and see where we want to go. But it's amazing because I find like I live in a more minimalist lifestyle, and it just feels really in resonance with myself and my family, and it feels good. We have a lot of plants in our home, but yeah, it's pretty freeing.
Yeah, I know, because I learned to declutter, and I used to collect everything, to keep everything, even clothes I hadn't used for years. But I just didn't want to let them go. And then a little bit because of necessity, when you keep on moving. When I moved here, since I moved here, I moved a lot of times. So, and the space obviously was smaller. So that was a necessity. But after a while, when I also started to go into my spiritual journey, I realized the importance of the clutter. And as you said, it really makes you feel freer and more relief, like there is space within you more than the physical space around you.
Absolutely because the shifts you're making in your exterior environment is happening in the interior environment as well. And it's welcoming in new opportunities, new blessings, new, again, opportunities to really choose differently,
I like that.
moving forward.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many more tips as well. That's just like a very general one that I find would work for anyone, honestly, that would be on this journey. But there are certainly others, like looking at your front entryway in particular, ensuring that the door opens fully. And actually all doors for that matter, you want to make sure that you can open it fully so that it gets that optimal chi, life force energy to come into your space. But our front entry and our front door is actually known as the mouth of chi. So you want to make sure that you're able to really create this massive influx of positive energy that can then circulate through your entire home space. So no matter where you're living, no matter if you have just a room, or if you have an apartment, or if you have a house, like a detached house, it's regardless, ensuring that you have that entrance door opening fully, unobstructed, is going to be a really great practice to have, an element to have in your home.
I like that, because I love doors.
Yeah.
I love this. And yeah, you're right. And I feel like it's also, the door also is a meaning of like opportunities. So if you can open it as much as possible, then it means that you can welcome opportunities, I guess.
Absolutely.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. Well, now tell us where we can find you, so then if we need you, we know where to go and get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So my Feng Shui practice is known as Jess Neary Feng Shui, and you can find me on my website at jessnearyfengshui.com. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram as Jess Neary Feng Shui. So you'll find me in any platform or those 3 platforms, and I'd be happy to talk to you about anything that you're working on currently and creating a space to really help support that.
I love it. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Jess. This was such a beautiful conversation, and I really love your tips and what you do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Mara. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And I hope you love the story that Jess told us about her missing out at the beginning and then bringing her life back to where she was supposed to be. If you want to get in touch, all the details are in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can just go to my website, theintuitionqueen.com, or you can find me on Instagram, Facebook as theintuitionqueen.com. I offer a clarity call if you feel like maybe something like what happened to Jess happened to you, or you just feel that your job is not helping you, it's not making you feel good, and there's something else inside of you that is strongly calling you, but maybe you're just afraid. Jess said in our episode that she didn't think she could leave. So, everybody has their own thinking, their way of seeing life, but know that there is something within you that is waiting for you to get out and to make you feel happy. You can have a better life. You can have a career that you love and that you enjoy, and you can manage as you like. And as Jess said, everything is going to change around you. So if you want help with that, book your clarity call with me. Go on to my website. I will also put the link below, so you can just click on there. Otherwise, just follow me. And if you like this episode, please do share it and subscribe to the podcast, and leave us a comment. And I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Your heart is full and wanting more. Your future's at the door. Your mind is clearer than before. Your heart is full and wanting more. Your future's at the